ahead and get started. I want to be respectful of everyone's time. So welcome. Happy afternoon. Thanks for coming back after lunch to join us. My name is Jenna Parisi, and I am the Director of Collegiate Program Development at the nonprofit organization Transforming Youth Recovery, which means that I have the honor of working with colleges and universities all across the country who apply for grant funding to initiate collegiate recovery programs on their campuses. Now, I work most closely with our grantees in the Western region, including California, which is how I've had the pleasure of working with all of these folks that you're going to hear from today. To my right, Jerry Phelps from UC San Diego, Angie Bryan from UC Santa Barbara, and Audrey Pusey from UC Riverside. So you'll hear from each of them in more depth about the collegiate recovery programs on their respective campuses. And just slightly before we get started, I just wanted to get a sense of where we are in the room in terms of knowledge about collegiate recovery programs and how much background you were looking for. So how many of you are really unfamiliar with collegiate recovery programs, would like some background, and are looking for campus examples? Okay, a few there. How many somewhat familiar, maybe collaborating with a program already that you might have on campus? About half there. Okay, so I think we'll have some information that'll be useful for all of you. I am a person in long-term recovery from a mental health disorder. And when I was an undergrad, I was suffering and in and out of doctor's visits and, my minimum number of counseling sessions, and no one was asking about my substance use and how that might have been influencing the medications I was taking, for example. My sister is in recovery from a substance use disorder. She was hospitalized for alcohol poisoning, she was banned from all student activities and events as a result of another incident, and yet no one asked about her substance use. So I share this with you to illustrate, I think, what are going to be the enormous opportunities and touch points for any college student in points of impact with faculty or staff where this might be addressed, might be asked about, and might be offered with a welcoming, supportive environment such as a collegiate recovery program can provide. And these three have been tremendous advocates for the students on their campuses, and they're all housed, as you'll see, in different departments. This slide, again, to illustrate, because I know we've had a lot of discussion about mental health at the conference and a lot of clinicians, and this comes from Alexander Lade's survey of 26 existing collegiate recovery programs across the country and their students, again illustrating the tremendous impact of mental health on students who may have experienced this throughout their lifetime or are still doing so as they are involved in a collegiate recovery program. And students in recovery may differ from some other students that you are used to be seeing, but collegiate recovery programs can really have a benefit for so many across the campus community. They are really important for students who are already in long-term recovery, and there may be students who are coming to your campus with multiple years of sobriety behind them. Collegiate recovery programs can be important for students who might be struggling with their use and wanting to make changes in their behavior and could really benefit from seeing a higher vision of themselves modeled by their peers who are in recovery and involved in one of these programs. The programs can also be really important for planting a seed for students who maybe now aren't making decisions about changing their behavior, but maybe doing so in the future and would be reaching out for help. The most effective collegiate recovery programs are going to be multifaceted, they're going to be comprehensive, but they're really going to match the specific campus environment where they're located and be reflective of the needs and interests of their students. So they're going to look like a variety of things. That's why I think it's going to be so nice for you to hear from all of these campuses about what it looks like on their campus. But they are designed to provide a nurturing, supportive, affirming, and fun environment for students who are in recovery from substance use disorders and a variety of addictive behaviors. Okay. and they are effective. So again, coming from this ongoing study of 26 established programs, we find that students involved in these programs have higher GPA, higher graduation retention rates, lower rates of return to use. And these are figures that might be important to upper level administrators who are looking for facts and figures if you're thinking about starting a program on your campus. And we want to highlight and celebrate Cassie, one of the students from UCSB who received an award and is now moved on to grad school. These programs are also on the rise, which is awesome. They started in the 80s, and we've, in the past few years, have seen nearly a tripling of the number of efforts. And this is partly what we've done at Transforming Youth Recovery, is made a concerted effort to celebrate and recognize all of those at campuses across the country that are doing more to enhance the experience for students in recovery on their campus. So that may mean just a staff person and a small group of students who are cultivating the basis for a collegiate recovery community. And you'll see that the purple line that's increasing here reflects a number of schools that have received grants and are now engaging in these efforts. And I actually ran a report this morning, which we have mapped 115, and just hearing at this conference this morning about another new school that's popping up. So it's constantly in flux and really exciting. We believe that there is a life cycle for any recovery community. So as I mentioned, it might just be starting out with a staff and a few students who are trying to find this core group of recovery students and learning to support them as they move on to more mature and sustainable features. This is a listing of our grantees from 2012 and 13, and where they have self-identified and placed themselves in this life cycle. So you see that we have these two folks who have put themselves in establishment and one in sustainability. And the purple number running along the bottom represents the average number of engaged students by stage as reported by the main staff contact that we've been working with on the grant. And again, that tends to increase as it becomes a more mature and sustainable program. Okay. We initiated a research study beginning in 2012 to identify community-based assets, and that could be person, place, or thing, resources that are going to help students in recovery to thrive in the fullness of their college experience. 38 were identified, that these are the basis for building collegiate recovery capacity, and they were re-ranked based on our grantees in our spring survey this year. So these are the top 8. So I just want you to be listening for some of these things as you listen to these folks. For example, students, how they're involved in the program, how staff or space might be incorporated into the program, and how meetings on campus might be incorporated. We have a separate website for each grantee, and any school out there is able to identify the assets that exist within their own campus community and actually map those things. We also have launched a new community platform, so outside partners, collaborators, treatment providers, recovery housing, all has a way of being reflected and recognized on this map, so I encourage you to visit that. And all of the resources that you find on the website are publicly accessible, and we're more than happy to provide technical assistance if you have questions about those things. This is just an example of a program page, so if you're looking for more information about a particular collegiate recovery program or someone you might collaborate with or call up to ask a question, you can find information on the map as well. And lastly, I just wanted to give a quick shot of what the network in California is looking like. So based on the asset mapping activity that each of these grantees have done, that's the larger circle. You're going to see they have a separate model that's been generated. And then there are a number of other schools that are popping up, including a few new grantees that we have launching programs this semester, such as San Diego State University. I was also hearing about USD's ongoing effort this morning, so I have to add that to the map. And then a few more, if you excuse this sort of misplaced cutoff in Northern California, schools that are coming up there. So if there are any others in the room or any community colleges that are engaging in this, please feel free to reach out to us so that these can be also reflected in this growing network of support for students in recovery in California. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Angie.
Can someone just let me know when I should wrap up? Okay, thanks. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Angie. I'm a counselor in the Alcohol and Drug Program at UCSB, which is part of our Student Health Service. I'm going to talk a little bit more about our program in a minute. Some of you I know, and some of you I haven't met before, so thank you all for joining us. And I'm just kind of aware that we're not spending as much time trying to sell this idea anymore, which is kind of an amazing evolution, that I think most of us get it, why we need this now. And now we can just talk about the how to do it, which is really cool to kind of see that transformation. So Gauchos for Recovery is our Collegiate Recovery Program at UCSB. So most of you are probably familiar with the demographics at UCSB. We're a large public institution, and you're probably familiar with Isla Vista, or maybe you're not, but it's a unique community that borders our campus, and most of our students live there, as well as a lot of students from our Santa Barbara City College, as well as other people, and it's right next to the ocean. So there's a lot of partying, substance use that goes on there and on our campus as well. But in addition, we're consistently ranked as one of the top public universities in the world. So there's a lot of studying and a lot of partying happening at our school. So the Alcohol and Drug Program is where our Collegiate Recovery Program is housed. We are part of the Student Health Service. However, we have our own satellite office. So a lot of times students don't necessarily view us as being part of the medical center, because we do have a separate building that's actually located in Isla Vista where students live, and we do have some counselors over at the main student health building. The Alcohol and Drug Program overall, we do group and individual counseling, mostly mandated, so when students are getting in trouble in the residence halls for substance use, or they're getting a minor in possession, the courts refer to our program. We also do, voluntary counseling and support groups. So that was kind of the structure that was in place. Main focus is prevention and outreach. So Collegiate Recovery kind of developed through me as an arm of the Alcohol and Drug Program. So the process that we went through, I've been working at UCSB for 9 years. My background is in student conduct. I'm a person in long-term recovery. And so this idea of supporting students in recovery in college was always kind of on my radar, and something that, I've been passionate about and talking about for a long time. And so I went back to school to become a marriage family therapist, and was able to transition into working in the Alcohol and Drug Program, which was a really good fit for me, and I was able to kind of bring some of my ideas there. And we're very, blessed that we have the Alcohol and Drug Program, which kind of is a perfect fit for collegiate recovery. And so our director was really supportive of trying something new and bringing in this new asset to our program. So I was introduced to the idea of a collegiate recovery program. I got a copy of some replication materials from Texas Tech University, and those are all available online. They're replication materials now, so anyone can access them, and they have really great workbooks that are kind of step-by-step things that you need to do, and so that was really helpful to me. So I started just by making a formal proposal. I started doing some focus groups just to see, are there actually students out there who need this? And one thing I learned through that process is it's really important to kind of come up with a definition of recovery. What does recovery mean to you? What does it mean for your program on your campus? And it evolves. Our definition of recovery has evolved as we've had more students involved in the program. But when I just put something out there, students in recovery, I didn't really get back what I was hoping to get. I didn't get people who were committed to recovery of my idea of recovery. I got a couple of people who were concerned about their substance use problems at the time, or people who were just abstinent. And those are all great things that we're trying to include now, but it wasn't necessarily what I was kind of fishing for. So that kind of prompted me to rethink, what wording do I use, being really intentional in my language in terms of what kind of people am I trying to attract. We have an alcohol and other drug town hall meeting at UCSB annually in February, where we include campus and community constituents. And at this meeting, our director had maybe one bullet point on, a big presentation about the idea of collegiate recovery, and that I was trying to start something. The Alcohol and Drug Program receives an annual county contract from Santa Barbara County for prevention. And it turns out that the person who supplies our funding through the county is also a person in long-term recovery, and so was very interested in the idea and offered to add $10,000 annually to our contract specifically for recovery. So magical things happen when you just start doing what you are passionate about. And so we were very lucky to have that funding from the very beginning. And through them, I was able to go out to Texas Tech and kind of take a look at their program, which is a really formalized, established program with amazing services, and I got really inspired to keep working on this. I work to kind of build some relationships, which I think are really important with campus departments and clinicians. And then, long story short, I wasn't officially hired in the alcohol and drug program until July of 2012. Because I made myself indispensable. So they had to officially hire me, and they created a position with 20% devoted to recovery. So most of my job is still clinical work with our regular clients that are referred to us. So that can be a challenge sometimes because I don't get to spend as much time working on the recovery program as I would like to, but I'm grateful that it's part of my job at all. So the main thing that we use our county funding for, my background, working in student conduct, I had peer interns. I was a resident director before that, so I've got experience working with student staff. So that was just kind of my instinct was, this is the way to go. If you want to attract students, you use other students. So I used our county funding to hire recovery peer interns. I wrote up a job description. I just started advertising it in all the different forums that I was aware of, and just to kind of see what would happen. I had no idea if I would get any applicants or not, but I just put it out there. And I had several applicants actually, and was able to hire 2 students. I had some requirements in there. They had to have, preferably a year sober, but it was sort of negotiable. They had to be working some type of recovery program, either 12-step or some other way that they were supporting their recovery. Their job was doing peer counseling, which is a really big part of our program. And as we talk about in recovery that, people identify with other like people. And so for us, having these students available to provide peer counseling is huge. If someone was meeting with, a physician or a psychiatrist and they're expressing concern about their substance use, but they have no idea how they could possibly, be sober, to be able to connect them with another student who's actually doing that is a really great connection to make, because it just gives them that hope that it's possible. So the peer counseling piece is a huge part of what they do. Outreach, just being visible, the more that we can just be out there and let students know that there's another option. If they're considering making changes to their use, just to be able to see that there's students who are in recovery that are at UCSB, they're thriving, they're having a great college experience, just kind of gives them that little seed, of an idea that maybe it's possible for them. And then they also facilitate our 12-step meeting. So we have a weekly meeting, 12-step based meeting called Students for Recovery. So it's not specifically AA or NA, but we use the 12 steps. Texas Tech, they have a meeting called Celebration of Recovery, so we kind of modeled it after that. It's open to the whole community. The meeting itself it's called Students for Recovery as opposed to Gauchos for Recovery. Part of the contract that we have with the county is that we have to be open to the community of Isla Vista, and so we really also work with our Santa Barbara City College, because so many of their students live in Isla Vista, to make our services available to them as well. But it's mostly students, all students, who attend the meeting. So there isn't a formal roster or anything like that. It's open to anyone who wants to come. We have a sign that sits outside the building. Sometimes we get people who come in because they saw the sign. So it's available to anybody who wants to participate. We also have a grant from the Stacey Mathewson Foundation, which allowed us to work on developing a space. So we have a space. So we have a space we call the lounge, the Recovery Lounge. So it used to be a closet, and we were able to convert it into a little lounge. So we have computers, we have Wi-Fi, couches, we have a coffee maker, we have a fridge, we have a recovery library with all kinds of 12-step and other recovery-based literature that people can use when they're in the room or check out to take home with them. We also have the space with the blue and orange couches. That's one of our group rooms. The recovery lounge is within the building, the Alcohol and Drug Program building in Isla Vista on the first floor, and it adjoins with one of our regular group counseling rooms. But that room is only used, a couple of times a day and not in the late afternoon or evening. So we open the door and are able to expand into that space. So that's where the 12-step meeting is held. Most of the time when our lounge is open, that door is open so people can spread out into the space as well. So I'm hoping someday we have the whole thing just to ourselves, but for now it works really well. So the lounge is open from 4 to 7 p.m. on weekdays. We have one of our recovery peer interns staffing that space. And so that way, they can just have the door open if anybody wants to come in and use the space. They're also there usually during finals week. They're open, all day or in the evening or on the weekends. And they just kind of text each other and say, I'm going to be in the lounge all day today. Do you want to come and use it? So the Gauchos for Recovery is a student organization. So they're registered with the university, which gives them access to other funding as well. The peer counseling, like I said, has been a big asset to our program. The Students for Recovery meeting and the outreach are all things that I think we've done really well. Some other goals for the future, housing is an issue for us because Isla Vista is really not a sobriety-friendly place. So we're actually working with recovery grads. They have a table outside to start a haven in Isla Vista that would also be open to not just UCSB but City College students as well. Trying to build our numbers because we don't have a formalized program in the sense that we don't require people to register, we don't have an application, anyone can kind of use the services a la carte. Sometimes it's hard to kind of hold on to people and get them really invested and stay to kind of mentor other new members. So we're kind of working on developing some leadership positions within the student organization to try to keep people invested. I'd like to be able to provide scholarships to all of our students coming in, and also provide a greater diversity of 12-step meetings. Right now we just have AA in Isla Vista, so I'd like to be able to have NA, OA, Al-Anon, as well as a larger space that our students can access independently. So I think that's it for us. So I think we'll have question time at the end, so I will pass it along to Audrey.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know this is a tough time. We were talking about right after lunch is the worst time during the conference on the second day. We should have done it like dance party style and had, the rave in here, but we'll do the best we can. So my name is Audrey Pusey, and I'm currently an associate director for residence life at UCR. And the area that I work in right now is student conduct or judicial. And you're going to see how my program and the growth of it has varied very much from where Santa Barbara has started. And a lot of that comes from just the fact that some of the key folks, their passion starts in a certain area and it kind of grows up around that area of the campus. Working through housing and residential life, one of the things that I noticed quite a bit on our campus was that we had students coming in that had difficulties. They were making poor choices, and some of those difficulties were because of the fact that there was an underlying addictive disorder that was happening. I'm actually a person that's in long-term recovery from an eating disorder. I've been a certified drug and alcohol counselor for about, almost 2 decades now, about 19 years. I can't even say that, I'm getting so old. But anyways, in addition to that, I was also on the founding board for the Association of Recovery in Higher Education. And as Angie did, I became introduced to this concept of collegiate recovery through the model of Texas Tech. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how we actually got started and moved to where we're at right now on our campus. Angie had talked quite a bit about Santa Barbara being, I always joke, and I say this during every presentation that we have, that the joke I make on my campus is for Halloween, I send all my students on a bus to Angie's campus to party, because that's where everything's happening is Vista Isla up there, or Isla Vista in her area. But our campus at UCR was very much known for not being the party space. We really don't have a lot of overt partying happening on campus. We definitely have things that are happening, on the perimeter of the campus. But I think we had a much more difficult sell with the administration as far as saying that there was an issue on our campus, because it wasn't something that was blatantly in their face. The folks that were in the conduct areas or in the counseling areas saw it, but it was much more kind of under wraps than it was things that we were seeing students overdose or seeing students that were, harming themselves in some way that would come to public fruition at those times. UCR, different than Santa Barbara in that we have about 2,100 student population. Our campus is extremely diverse. Usually every year we're in the top 10 of the most diverse campuses in the region or in the nation. And with that, one of the things that I do want to say and address is usually about 50% of our students or so identify as being Asian American. And one of the things that comes along with that we found is we do need to have some special care that goes into looking at what each one of our ethnic groups brings to mental health issues and how they view that. So those diverse issues is definitely something that has impacted how we look and deal with helping students on our campus to move forward in their recoveries and even to become engaged in the recovery process, because in many ways, the stigma related to it keeps them from even coming in the door. So you're going to see we've done a great deal of work to kind of break down that stigma the past few years. About 58% of our students on the college campus are first-year generation, and what that means for our students, as many of your students, if you're on the college campuses, is that they're working jobs, they're trying to help parents sometimes at home. In addition to that, they're trying to do the best that they can to overachieve, and especially this generation of millennials, everything they're doing is to the level of perfection. Great deal of self-pressure that comes on, a lot of anxiety that they're dealing with, and that sense of being able to not fail their families or themselves creates a great deal of, I'd say, adverse things that happen on the campus for them. I'm going to talk just really briefly about kind of how we got started. Angie talked a little bit about the progress on her campus. We actually began starting the research for our model in 2008, and we actually did a seminar with Texas Tech, some of the representatives from there. And at that time, I don't think that the nation was really, or maybe not the nation, but the region where we were at was not really that willing to kind of take a look at this from the aspect of recovery. Being in higher student education and higher education, I think that we look at things more from the level of prevention and education rather than longer-term recovery. And when we did the seminar on designing collegiate recovery communities, really this kind of fell flat with our audience because the audience really couldn't wrap their minds around the fact that this was long-term preventative care for students and not intervention and active treatment. And really the message that kind of came across was that we were doing active treatment on the university campus, which is not at all true with collegiate recovery. This is very much about sustaining recovery and protecting recovery for those students that have already been through treatment. 2008, 2011, we continued different efforts to try to bring collegiate recovery to our campus. That included creating a board of about 15 directors across campus, creating a mission and vision. All of those things didn't really seem to work for us. We didn't really have the momentum behind us. And during that time, as many of you also know, we were in a serious budget climate that really didn't call for or didn't allow for new programs to be brought forward. So during that time, I said try again because the efforts were out there, but we really didn't make a lot of momentum. 2011, the Healing Highlanders kind of became the answer on our campus. This is an independent student organization that was founded on the UCR campus. I am one of the advisors for that group. And basically, this was an ally-based organization where we had a group of young people that came forward that did not self-identify as being in recovery. They self-identified as being the friends and family of folks in recovery. They saw this movement as being a social justice movement and wanted to become involved. So we began working on our campus actually from an ally basis, not from the actual student in recovery basis. From that original group that we had, we started doing a lot of outreach, a lot of seminars within the community, going to mental health fairs in the surrounding community around the college, doing different seminars for our peers actually within the college perimeter. In addition to that, in the first year of being organized, the students created the Collegiate Recovery Conference, which is held every year. We're actually going into our third year in November this year, and I think there's actually an advertisement in your pamphlet for that. We're hoping that maybe some folks come out with their students if you're looking at creating one of these on your campus. This is very much a student-run conference, and basically the whole idea of having the Collegiate Recovery Conference was to bring folks together so that they could talk about what it means to have an emerging community, a mature community, and really look at how student advocacy and student leadership plays a role in developing those, more than from the look of the administrative kind of putting it into place. So that, like I said, is going into its third year this year, and some of the other things that we're now doing this year, and when I say we, the Healing Highlanders are doing this year, along with planning for their conference, they're looking at developing a therapist assistant position with a local drug and alcohol agency, doing tutoring with like local high school students, and we're also looking at developing our first scholarship this year. A little bit about the Healing Highlanders themselves. I said they were established in 2011, independent student organization, ally-based. I think we talked about most of this. One of the things I didn't mention is this group did receive quite a bit of recognition for their first conference. They received the UC President's Award for Outstanding Student Leadership in 2013. That was a direct result of the work that they did to break down the stigma and push forward this idea of collegiate recovery across the Western region. And those are just some websites if you wanted to visit their Facebook or their the conference website. So some of the things that we're initiating, we are very much an emerging community at UCR because we've spent the past 3 years really looking at advocacy, really looking at how we can move the movement forward within the region. So we're now turning our view back into how we can actually create our program because we are not, you would think we would be where Angie's at right now and have a sustained community. We do not. We're still at the beginning stages of starting our funding and moving forward with that. And some of the things that we're going to have on the university campus is very similar to what you see in Angie's area that she was speaking about. Seminars weekly, 12-step meetings on the UCR campus, really creating a strong fellowship socially within the loft, which is going to be the sober space for students. Very similar, once again, to what UC Santa Barbara has set up, where there'll be computers, a resource library, different activities, and we've designed the space so that everything in the space can be moved. Furniture can go from, you know, a circled 12-step meeting to moving tables into a study group to moving things into putting down yoga mats. Very nice space with an indoor room and then an outside terrace to it for students to come and really partake in, you know, activities with other folks that know their story. One thing I didn't talk about here was we will have a graduate student. Some of the staffing that we're looking at is we will have a graduate student that's in the process of being hired at this time. That's going to be a 30-hour position that's live-in. They kind of work for room and board in order to be part of the community. We're also in the process of developing a job description very similar to Santa Barbara for a student intern that will also work with the graduate assistant. One of the things that is unique about our community is because we didn't have these really strong stressors with drug and alcohol use that we came into, similar to what Angie talked about, the fact that she had her drug and alcohol piece that was already in place. We did not have strong components like that on our campus. Therefore, we needed to seek out different long-term resources that would really be effective and really allow us to ethically start a program like this for our students. Some of the things that we're looking at doing is partnering with different agencies around the community. Some of those folks are Jenna's group, Transforming Youth Recovery, who we've received a couple of grants for to fund our efforts. MFI, which is the local drug and alcohol that we're doing tutoring with, and our therapist assistant program. And then Northbound Treatment Center is someplace we utilize a lot for inpatient. They have an academy that is associated with their treatment. And then Valenta Eating Disorder Center and The Haven, these are two very important groups for us because we're in the process of developing an intensive outpatient program that's going to be on the perimeter of our campus. It's going to be a joint effort between those two, a shared office where students can go in and really talk about whatever issues are coming up with them. Also, they're going to have a depression and anxiety track that's going to be very important to our process for students. We're hoping to have that up. We were hoping by September. As you all know, nothing moves quickly on campus, so hopefully by winter we'll have that up and ready to roll for students. The future, the loft is going to be opening in just a few weeks, no pressure. Develop these IOP partners on the perimeter of campus, strengthen our campus referral process system, and really what that means is really getting together with different folks across different campuses and being able to find those referrals and share assets across different campuses. The third annual Collegiate Recovery Conference will happen. We're really excited about the UCOP being involved and conferences like this happening so that we can share thoughts. And then we're also looking at expanding our community and inter-campus connections. I already talked about that. And we also need to establish a funding base. That's one of the things that's extremely important to each one of our communities as we're looking towards sustainability, is how do we find those ongoing funds, whether it be through private donors, through foundation, through county resources, where we can continue to do the things that we need to do for our students. Okay. And I'm going to pass it over to my colleague, Jerry.
So now I'm going to talk about a little different model, how we at UC San Diego created our recovery community, and we're still in the nascent or baby steps stage as well. But I'm from UC San Diego. I'm a psychologist with counseling and psychological services there. And our goal is to create a vibrant community. We have some audacious goals. We want to involve the students, staff, and faculty, and alumni, and the community, and similar to the goals of my partners. And we want to be known as a school that welcomes students in recovery and supports them. We hope to create, well, I'd love to create a center for students in recovery similar to a campus community center with a permanent staff and coordinator and all of that. This is the high bar here. And have a development strategy for scholarships, programming, support, and housing. So that's the big vision. I don't know why I put that one first, but the process has been really, just grassroots. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that has allowed me to do is become a staff champion of recovery in our university. That allows me to talk to students and have a language of recovery and be part of the community. We started with the AA meeting on our campus needed a room. I don't know about space problems on your campuses, but it's all over the place. Everybody's fighting for space, and so I was in a different position, and I had some space that I was in charge of, and so I allowed this AA meeting to go on in our wellness center, and it's started to thrive, and that's really where it came from with these students, and some of whom said, this meeting saved my life, and they came to me and they said, we want to continue this because, as you know, with student organizations and student communities, they're transient. And so I said, let's put this on our agenda for our alcohol and substance abuse, alcohol, tobacco, and other drug committee. You probably have those on your campus. Some of you may be representatives on that committee. And having this as a standing agenda item legitimized this as an issue. The main items on that is, are what are we going to do judicially? How are we going to address prevention? Those sorts of things. Supporting students in recovery was not on that. But our group is supportive. We did want to thank the Stacey Mathewson Foundation and Transforming Youth Recovery because we received a grant from them which funded our student intern. And at the same time, we started our Triton Recovery Group. And the Triton is our mascot. And so we started our Triton Recovery Group, and I'm the advisor to that group. And we had a president and a vice president and secretary and treasurer, and that's how it started with a couple of us. And now we're developing relationships with campus departments and clinicians and sober housing too. We have a lot of campus partners who, as you can see these campus partners, you may be able to kind of get a sense that each of them has needs as connections to students in recovery. By the way, how many of you know someone in recovery from alcohol or substances? It could be you or a friend. You could raise your hand. So we have about half of you, at least, who know somebody in recovery from alcohol or substances. So a lot of these people know somebody or know that in their communities there are people in recovery who need support. So similar to Angie and Audrey, we use recovery interns, and students are sort of our most powerful advocates. I'm going to help and advocate from an administrative position, but they're going to do the work. So what we did, the Stacey Mathewson Foundation, a grant, encourages us to build capacity to promote sustainability, and that's what our intern has been doing. I've been supervising the intern and doing what I need to do from the top or from the administrative position. They're finding partners, connecting with partners, building our organization. And we have a great student organization, the Triton Recovery Group, with a small group of active members and then peripheral members. And this was our first year last year. And our main focus is on branding and social events and tabling and getting more students out there. We estimate that there's about 2% of a college campus, let's say, in recovery. So you can estimate that for your campus. We think there's about probably 600, up to 600 students in recovery on our campus. So we have a large community that we need to connect with. Student to student is one big way to do that. But a nice logo and a cool website, that's pretty cool. And collaboration with other campus groups and campus community centers is really important. So that logo may look familiar to you. In another group, we came up with that logo, or they came up with that logo to evoke a sort of the recovery theme. Their mission, I think this shows what it means to be a student who's in recovery and wants that community, because they want a safe space, and they want resources and support and fellowship. So they want a safe space for them to self-identify and be with people who understand where they're at, and regardless of addiction or associated type of recovery, and a community to have fun and to help their well-being. So our students have fun, and our students connect with each other and support each other. And as you know, resiliency, social support creates resiliency, and I think this is one of the main reasons we're a positive effect on our campuses. So here's a lot of the things we did. We have bookmarks and T-shirts and tablecloths and table tents and Facebook pages and study breaks and game nights and all those things. But we did all that last year. We did all these things last year, so that was kind of cool. Here's our camping trip. If you know a student who's going to UC San Diego, who's in recovery, they should sign up for this cool camping trip in the Anza Borrego Desert. Unfortunately, it's not going to be spring, so you're not going to see those flowers. But anyway, so we're having our first camping trip, and we're going to we want to create housing. By the way, as you may know, substance-free housing is not recovery-oriented housing. And sometimes substance-free housing has more substance use in it than non-substance-free housing. And I see some shaking of heads because the parents put them in the substance-free housing because they had a substance use problem. So we are wanting on-campus and off-campus housing. And we want to increase our membership, increase referrals, collaborate with programs, create a meeting space, and collaborate with other San Diego colleges. Jenna, do you want to follow up with our last slide?
We just had an additional slide at the end. We wanted to share some additional resources. If you're interested in more information, definitely check out ARHE, which is the Association of Recovery in Higher Education, and they host an annual Collegiate Recovery Conference every year, as well as ARS, which is focused on recovery high schools, but also has tracks in their conference about college students and really influencing the whole trajectory of a student who might be bridging from high school to college. And this is the upcoming conference at UC Riverside. So again, there's a flyer in your brochure, but would love for everyone to join us there and bring students, because there'll be a lot for them to do, and that's going to be primarily on the November 8th and 9th. It'll be open to everyone who registers. Okay, so this is our contact information. I'm happy to stay after if anyone has any specific questions related to TYR's grant program and how you might apply for funding, but we did want to take the remaining few minutes we have to open it up for questions that anyone else has for the panelists.
Do you find that your existing services invite students that maybe don't have any kind of treatment history or aren't sure even if they've had a problem but have decided for themselves, I'm going to go this way? Or does it have to be something like, what distinguishes, somebody mentioned prevention, intervention, and this recovery segment, right? What gets somebody entrance into the recovery segment of the community? Does it have to be an identified past history of treatment or acknowledgement of an addictive problem, or what if somebody just wants to sort of go sober because they think they're drinking too much, and maybe they are, and not necessarily have counseling about it or whatever, just do a sober lifestyle, then is that a community member potentially for the recovery support community?
I can address this from, at least from the UCR side, because each of our communities are a little bit different. But because sorry, I'm not talking into the mic. Because we started from an ally base, our loft, which, the Healing Highlanders are the independent group, and then the loft is the actual program. There will be an application process that is open to either allies or folks that self-identify in recovery. And then there may be that middle gray area that you're kind of identifying of those folks that are kind of in the contemplation, pre-contemplation place. And actually a lot of these folks get identified by some of the staff. Our case manager will call in, or I'll see them come through my office, where we're actually kind of helping them through that stage of maybe there's something going on here. And a lot of those discussion we're finding now that we're emerging, a lot of the students that are coming into the community are identified by other staff members on campus and referred in, and then they go through a process of kind of internalizing what it means for them and whether or not they want to take things further. And we are very much open on our campus to helping those students come through that process. If they're going out to inpatient or they're active in intensive outpatient, they need to get through those programs before they can actually enter into the recovery loft. So before they need to be stabilized in their recovery on some level. Our students are actually still in active debate about how many months or days or a year, how long they want folks to be in recovery before they're allowed to enter into the loft, and whether or not there'll be 1 or 2 levels of access to that. So they're kind of making those decisions now, but we definitely want to have open arms to anybody that has interest in and is even contemplating maybe taking that first step, and how we can provide resources for them.
It's very similar for us. Part of our mission statement is that, we're including people in any type or stage of recovery with any interest or level of interest or desire. So we have an open door program. We don't have any membership requirements, just an interest. So we do get a lot of students who are referred from the courts to attend meetings, and we sign court cards. So some of those students may not, even identify as necessarily having a problem, or they're not aware of it yet, but we're open to everyone. We do get a lot of students referred from other clinicians, either on campus or off campus. Some people might currently be in an intensive outpatient treatment program, or maybe they're meeting individually with a therapist, and together they've identified that they need more support. We haven't at this point established any requirements like you guys are talking about. I think at a certain point we may get there, but at least right now, especially for the 12-step group, it's open. Anyone can come in off the street and go to this meeting, as long as they're not currently under the influence. We have a large range of students that we get. Sometimes I'm working with a student and their family before they even come to UCSB, because maybe they do have a treatment history already in high school, or they're transfer students and they've gone to treatment and they're wanting to find out what resources are available to them. So I'm working with them to get them plugged into our community, to find safe housing for them, or I'm working with a clinician at UCSB when someone is coming back after having a leave of absence because they went to treatment, or they had to take a quarter off, or whatever the case may be. They want to come back to UCSB, so we need to have a plan in place, and I'll kind of work with them to make sure that they're getting, not just individual support, but connection with our peer group. Or it's the people like you're talking about who have made this realization on their own, and I think I train the peer interns. We train them in peer counseling, but they, because we are affiliated in the student group and the 12-step meeting are affiliated with the alcohol and drug program, and as their advisor, I am available to them if there's clinical things that come up, so they are trained on kind of what's outside their scope. So if something were to come up even within the 12-step meeting, that they could call me on my cell phone, if there was something that was outside of their ability to respond to that, because they're not therapists and that's not their job. So we really do a lot of training on that of, how do they kind of know when they need to get help from somebody else, so we do have that clinical relationship.
So, yeah, I want to be respectful of our time and thank you all for coming, and we're happy to stay after if there are any additional questions. So enjoy the rest of the conference.